Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to gather a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world, one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing, a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. To gain that understanding, I am mining the intersection of psychology, theology, and philosophy to make you a better writer. This is episode number 63, Loyalty as a Driver of a Subplot. I am testing out a plan for a new style of class to follow on after my 35-lesson class that was designed as sequentially as one class builds on the next. I'm now going to be working on a different design that's taking the same material and bringing it through a momentum learning style. If you followed any of Ken Caputo's work, you're familiar with the concept of momentum learning. And it is a mechanism by which you establish a learning loop that is familiar but allows for gradual growth between repetitions so that you visit something that has a familiar pattern but continues to advance you as you work through the different loops. So you actually get a spiral. You're not running in circles, you're building a spiral of growth. And so what I'm exploring right now is the concept of how to utilize, kind of go to the intermediate level now. Having completed the 35-lesson class, many of my students are ready for another level of work. And I'm also building it in such a way that newcomers can arrive and they won't get quite as much out of the class as the intermediate students because this is their first time through the loop. But the intermediate students will be able to take the same material and go deeper. So I'm really excited about the potential. So we're going to play with, this would be the cycle. The plan is for a month cycle. The first week of the month, we throw out a character trait that could be used to drive the main plot of a story. And throughout the week, we explore different aspects of it. We did that with Magnificence last week, if you were following along. Then, the next week in the cycle, we add another character trait. This one is a little more subtle, and this character trait will be used to drive a subplot in the story, or it may be used to reach a major milestone in the main plot of the story. So it's not quite as extensive as the driver characteristic, and we explore that characteristic through the same steps that we use to explore the main driver of the story. Then in the third week, we bring in the most subtle of the character traits. This one is a character trait that supplies a nuance that makes the character more dimensional and more real, but does not necessarily drive the story. It's more like the attitude that the character brings to the situations. And so we use the same mechanism to explore that character trait in the third week. Then the fourth week of the month is the Grand Challenge week, where you take all three of those, the plot, the subplot, and the nuance, and you put them all together and actually write a short story that utilizes all the work you've been building towards in the 3 weeks. We'll have a community where they can be shared, and the dream is that we'll collect the ones that are publication ready, and when we have enough collection of these as the months go by to do so, we'll publish an anthology, and so that people that can be in the class can have an opportunity to actually be a published writer and even make a small royalty. We probably won't have a giant distribution, at least starting out, but it will be fun. And I'm looking forward to this very much. So let's continue on then. We're working with loyalty. We're in the second week of the cycle, so we're building out a driver of a subplot. Now, yesterday I suggested that you take loyalty and you explore it from your own set of emotions. How have you experienced it? How have you witnessed it? Have you had any struggles where you were challenged in your loyalty? Has anyone ever disappointed you with not being quite as loyal as you would have liked? And what have you observed either in real life situations where you were a bystander, or perhaps in fiction you read, or a movie, or some real history story that you were aware of? So now what we're going to do is we're going to make it more specific to our characters and to the plot that we started to create last week. So now we're going to take all of those emotions that we experienced while just exploring it in our minds, and we're going to explore those same emotions and project them onto our character. And what we always try to do with this method of expressing emotions is we try to first present the situation, sort of the facts on the ground, first to our reader, and give them a pause, either through some descriptive writing or something that's light, but just gives them a moment in their reading where they can experience the emotions of the situation themselves before you describe the emotions that the character is feeling. Because then the result, the reader will have a combination of the two and will have a very, very dynamic character in mind. Much more dynamic than you could possibly dictate to them with your, because you can never imagine what any individual reader will have to bring to it. So that we're on the second day here of playing with loyalty as our subplot character trait, and I invite you to play around with it in that way. Start assigning it to the character you began to create with your magnificence, and see what you come up with in the way of descriptors. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.